So we've seen all different kinds of approaches to school change over the decades, and one of the most common approaches has been to find something that works somewhere in the world and say we're going to take this piece and we're going to replicate it in lots of different other places. And one of the things that we found is that doesn't actually often work very well, that things that take root in one context don't necessarily work in another context because different kinds of initiatives and interventions are actually pretty context dependent. That's one way of walking into the conversation of why would we think about using the design thinking process not just with our students, but with our educator communities, with our faculty communities as a tool to solving the problems that adults face in schools. So we're here again with Blake Sims, who's the founder of Epic Solutions and has been a huge help in developing this course. Blake, do you want to talk a little bit about why educators might think about using the design thinking process not just as activities to do with their students, but as part of the process of school change and school improvement?
I think a lot of schools are using this with their staff in order to get their staff comfortable with this process. In order for teachers to bring these kinds of activities and exercises into their classroom, I think they need to feel confident and comfortable with the process. And so one way to do that is for schools to begin using it through PD sessions to just get their staff on board. But I think on a deeper level, schools recognize the challenges that they face, both on a community level as well as in the broader system. And a lot of us feel stuck and unsure of how to drive change, even though we might know what our end goal looks like. How do we get there? I think the design thinking process provides one tool that teachers and staff can really use to explore those challenges and develop some of those meaningful solutions, as well as identify solutions that others are using successfully and think about how to iterate them and adapt them in order to fit their needs so that they are appropriate for their community.
And so educators then have a chance of being able to go back to their students and say, you know, part of the reason why we're learning how to do this here in the science class or the engineering class or the history class, whatever, is that this is actually a set of tools that we're using as your teachers to be able to make the school here better. We've all known for a long time that our lunch periods are too short and we can't get kids through them fast enough, or that our classrooms don't work as well as they want to now that we have so much more technology in them. And we as faculty are using this process called design thinking to help us think through these really complicated problems that have gotten us stuck for a long time. And you know, when teachers can really say that with a genuine voice to their students, that lets them say, look, this isn't just something that we're making you do because we came up with it and we need to fill your time before you become a sixth grader or something like that, but because we really think these are tools that are going to be valuable for you as you lead a life of problem solving, you know, in the civic sphere and in the workplace.
And I think teachers are saying the design thinking process is a process that practitioners use in the real world. Scientists use this process. Doctors use this process. Well, teachers use this process, or at least more teachers should be using this process. And so by practicing it, they're reinforcing those same skills and they begin to develop that designer mindset. And I think that will begin to permeate an entire school culture. And that is the goal of really embracing change and innovation that is meaningful, being open to those risks and those failures, and being honest and saying, oh, we tried that solution, we tried to shift our schedule this way because we thought it would improve student learning. It didn't, or what parts didn't, or what did work. And I also think it's crucial for schools to be bringing in the voice of other stakeholders. They need to be engaging their students, their parents, more of the staff and faculty as they're making these decisions. And that discovery phase of the design thinking process is really an opportunity to tap into the various stakeholders involved in a school community.
And certainly, you know, again, just like we talked about in design thinking in classrooms, there's some of this work that's already happening. Certainly, there's some of this work that's already happening at the school level as well, where when communities go to build a new school or when they make some kind of big change in the community, they have various kinds of stakeholder meetings, they bring in focus groups, they do some of these pieces. I think what we see is they take bits and pieces of things that are like the design thinking process, but there may be some power, in having a shared language that all the folks in the community can use together to say, look, we have a new challenge here. You know, our middle school is overcrowded. That's what's happening in my hometown right now. And so what we're needed to do is really try to understand that problem together, and then we're going to develop and prototype a couple of different kinds of solutions. And there are certain kinds of things that are more easy to prototype than not. It's hard to prototype, you know, the building of an entire new building, but we can prototype. Here's a bunch of architectural designs that we can put in front of people that we can have students try to play through and talk through and things like that. Figuring out how, again, we can build on the existing good work that's happening in schools. And there are a couple of school districts that are out there, some of whom we've featured in this course. There are others like the Menlo Park School District in California that have really embraced design thinking as a way of talking to their whole community about how we can make changes in our schools to prepare students better for the world ahead.
I think the discovery phase is a key part in exploring challenges within a community and really focusing and narrowing in on problems. I think the other part where I'd like to see more schools involved in the design thinking process is in the iteration phase, where we are thinking more creatively about what would a pilot be that we can really test and experiment with our users and drive change that way.
Yep.
I know that there's a lot of concerns, this idea of like experimenting with students, and is it something that's appropriate? How do we do it in a way that's not going to set students back? And I think if we're continually focusing on the goals and the objectives, we use this process to make improvements and drive student learning. At the end of the day, we want students to be successful and prepared. We want teachers to be engaged and motivating their students. And if they can use this process to enhance their community, enhance what's happening in the school building, enhance their classrooms, I think it's worth figuring out some of those opportunities to experiment and try.
And I think the terrific thing about those approaches is that designers bring with them a mindset of hope and optimism about change. That we've had schools for a long time. They have a lot of history behind them. There's a lot of practices that we just think of as normal practices. But if there are parts of schools that aren't working for us now because the world is changing, then we're not stuck with them forever. That whatever it was 150 years ago, people started making age-graded classrooms. And if those still work for us, great. But if they don't, then we can think about what would alternative designs look like. A lot of school reform, school change efforts can feel like, things are broken and we've got to really, slug through these kind of broken problems, turnaround kinds of things. And I think the designer's mindset is like there are better futures out there that we can all be responsible for trying to create together.
I'm just really excited to see what students and schools are able to come up with as they embrace this process and apply the design thinking process to challenges they experience every day.
Absolutely. There's a lot of great work ahead.